Okay, take two. Welcome to Critical Weight Theory. I sometimes talk about rock music on this podcast, but I like to also address other musical genres like funk, for example. Nothing wrong with a good funk groove. You get clean guitar, tight bass, driving percussion, and of course, some zaniness thrown into the mix usually. So, today we're talking about a band that managed to revitalize funk as a musical form, crash Spotify's business model, and sell out Madison Square Garden, all without a record label. This is the story of Vulfpeck, the internet's favorite funk band, and they really do have a pretty strong following. So, they are also fellow Michiganders, so I guess that's another reason for me to cover them. They have some University of Michigan cred. So Wolfpeck started back in 2011 when a group of music students met at the University of Michigan. You've got Jack Stratton, the mastermind and multi instrumentalist, Theo Katzman, who plays drums, guitar, and sings, Joe Dart, a bass player whose tone could probably power a small city, and Woody Goss on keyboards. Sorry, Woody, I couldn't think of anything to improvise about you or anything. But you do a swell job on the keyboards. Their first video, titled "Beastly," hit YouTube that same year. It's a tight, groovy jam that set the tone for everything that followed. So check that track out if you want to get their origin story. Remember, it's called "Beastly." They called their sound vanilla funk, simple, raw, unprocessed, but that supposed simplicity became their secret weapon. And like most music that's often called simple, there's a little more complexity to it than some people would suggest. I said the same thing about punk rock, for example. In fact, there's some punk rock bass lines that would give a lot of other styles of music a run for their money. So the Wolfpeck sound, if you listen to Wolfpeck, you can hear the DNA of the Meters, the Funk Brothers, James Brown a little bit, even Steely Dan. I'm sure there's some hip hop influence thrown into the mix as well. It's funk that breathes, tight, syncopated grooves, catchy melodies, and almost no studio tricks. What you hear is what they played. Their music feels alive because it is. Minimal overdubs, no flashy production, just great musicians locked in. Songs like Back Pocket and Funky Duck turned that philosophy into something joyful, almost accidentally pop. And really, if I had one complaint about this band, it's almost that they're too good. You know what I mean? In more ways than one, they're almost too good musically, and they almost seem too wholesome. I almost can't relate to that, but the musicianship really overpowers my I guess more cynical side, you might say, the side that wants a band to seem a little bit more flawed and raw and edgy or whatever. But they are such good musicians that it kind of thwarts that initial feeling or instinct that I have regarding music. And you know what? Sometimes I do enjoy some uplifting stuff. You can't always listen to like Joy Division or something like that. You got to broaden your horizons every once in a while because too much of any one thing just isn't going to be good for you. And Wolfpack's debut EP, Mitpeck, came out in 2011. It was like a mission statement, relatively minimalistic, funky, and free to stream on YouTube, which is obviously how a lot of music is going to be from here on out. People want music to be free. They don't want to have to, spend tons of money every year on music. They want it to be free when possible. And fast forward to 2015, Thrill of the Arts was released, and suddenly the band was being called a post 2000 funk dream team. That record gave us Back Pocket and Funky Duck, songs that somehow sounded both retro and brand new. I gotta say, Funky Duck is it's just such a fun track. I love it. It kind of reminds you of what funk is all about, or what it can be all about. Then came The Beautiful Game in 2016. It added to their indie funk legend status. It included Dean Town, which, from what I understand, is a love letter to Jaco Pastorius and Weather Report, and one of the most iconic bass lines of the decade, perhaps. And in 2017, Mr. Finish Line brought in a wider circle of collaborators, singers, horn players, and the incomparable Antoine Stanley, whose vocals on Funky Duck are pure gold. And you know, I just love that song. I've said it already. I'm going to say it again. Check out Funky Duck. It's just a good time. By 2019, they'd done the unthinkable. They sold out Madison Square Garden. Their Live at Madison Square Garden album captures that night, and you can also watch it on YouTube. It's a DIY funk band playing one of the most iconic stages on earth, and that's not all that's sort of legendary about this band. There is the Sleepify stunt that I sort of hinted at earlier. So, Sleepify, what was that? In 2014, Vulfpeck released an album of complete silence, 10 tracks of nothing, and they told fans to stream it on repeat while they slept. Spotify counted every play at the time, and Wolfpack made enough money to fund a free tour. So it was a little bit of an innovative feat, but also from certain perspectives a little bit questionable or iffy. It was part genius, part prank, and a big middle finger to how streaming pays artists. The media ate it up. Billboard called it Wolfpeck's half joke silent album that made some serious cash. Spotify eventually pulled the album, and I'm sure they updated their policy to disallow tracks of pure silence, but the message ultimately stuck. And similarly, there's a Nine Inch Nails album or EP called Broken that has a bunch of silent tracks on it. And I'm sure if you were to look that album up on Spotify, those silent tracks wouldn't be there. And, in that case, it wasn't Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails trying to do a gimmick to fund a free tour. It was just that they had a secret track on the album. Anyway, only a band like Wolfpack or somebody like John Cage could turn sustained silence into a headline and all-time classic thought-provoking gimmick. So, what about the live experience and, the overall impact of the band? If you've ever seen Wolfpack live or just video footage like I've watched, then it's almost like it's more than a concert. It's part music clinic, part funk carnival. They do some audience participation stuff. They have fun little musical interludes and that sort of thing. There's a just fun atmosphere to it all. The crowd becomes part of the groove. The energy's wild but never too chaotic. It's just pure joy and precision. And again, like I said, if you're one of those people who cringes at people who are overly happy or whatever, you might not like this band. I'm just going to say that. And you might have to not get into this band if you're that strong, if you feel that strongly about it. But despite being independent, they've built a massive global fan base. No label, no hype machine, just YouTube, Bandcamp, and word of mouth. In a world that is chasing algorithms, Wolfpack they stuck to the groove, and somehow the groove won. So, from a Michigan basement to Madison Square Garden, Barden. Whoops. Anyway, they also released that Silent album on Spotify, and they're a part of funk history now. Anyway, Vulfpeck proved that you don't need big budgets or industry backing to make an impact. You just need rhythm, friendship, and a good sense of humor, and it doesn't hurt to be great musicians while you're at it. And if you haven't already, go check out their albums and, their live content on YouTube. And maybe next time you hit play, let it loop all night for old time's sake. And, that's going to basically wrap up the episode. So if you liked what you heard, go ahead and click the like button, subscribe, share the episode possibly, whatever seems right for you. And if you didn't like the episode, well, what can I say? Maybe I'll do better next time. I don't know.